Measure they say death ends love, but some hearts never learn to stop beating. In the quiet village of Ife-Ada, a young woman named Busayo waited 3 years for her lover to return. He had promised to build her a house and come back for her when it was finished. 3 years passed. The mango trees grew heavy with fruit. And Busayo's heart grew tired from waiting. Then one evening, when the sun bled into the hills, he returned. He looked the same. He smiled the same. He even wore the same scent of rain and dust. Soft female gasp. A distant shovel scraping soil. But his hands were cold. His footsteps left no sound. And at night, she heard him whisper to the wind, as if the wind whispered back. They were married beneath the jacaranda tree that had once kept her lonely watch. And for a while, love felt whole again. Until the night of their 3rd anniversary, when the earth beneath that tree began to breathe. His grave, it opened. Busayo met Jide in the market of Ife-Ada, one humid afternoon when the air shimmered like smoke. He had a mason's hands, broad, steady, dusted with the scent of wet clay. She had gone to buy pepper, but instead, she found a future. Jide was kind, quiet, and certain. He spoke little, laughed softly, and listened the way rain listens to rooftops. By the 2nd week, he was walking her home, carrying her basket as goats made lazy paths through the alleys. They fell in love in that simple, old way, with long looks, shy smiles, and promises whispered into dusk. When he proposed under the jacaranda tree, Busayo's heart bloomed faster than its purple flowers. But before their wedding drums could sound, news came from upriver. Jide's father was gravely ill. He left in haste, promising to return before the rains ended. He did not return. Months turned to years. The jacaranda lost its color. The market women began to sigh when Busayo passed, pity in their eyes. Still, she waited. Then, one evening, 3 years to the day since he left, Jide came walking down the road again. He looked thinner, quieter, but his eyes, they were the same. "I'm home," he said simply. "Forgive the years I owe you." They married within a week. The whole village gathered to watch her joy. Busayo wore white and gold, Jide wore a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. That night, when they lay down together, she noticed how cold he felt. "Are you unwell?" she whispered. He smiled faintly. "No. Just tired." But as she drifted to sleep, she heard him whispering, not to her, but to something unseen. A low, rhythmic murmur. A name she didn't know. And when she woke, there was dirt beneath his nails. Days passed, and life went on. But life with Jide began to feel like living beside a shadow. He still rose early and worked as before, but she never saw him sweat. He never ate more than a few bites. He rarely blinked. At night, Busayo would wake to find him sitting upright, eyes open, watching the doorway. Sometimes, he spoke softly to the empty dark, the kind of tone lovers use when comforting someone. "Don't worry," he'd say. "She doesn't know." She began to notice the small things, his reflection never caught fully in the mirror, his clothes always faintly damp, the faint smell of soil after rain that followed him everywhere. One afternoon, while washing his tunic, something dropped from the pocket, a folded, brittle paper, the corner marked with soil. She opened it. Burial record, Jide Adewale, died, year of the river flood. Busayo read it again. Again. The ink refused to lie. That evening, she waited by the door. When he entered, she held the paper out. "What is this?" He looked at her, unblinking. "A mistake." "Then tell me you're alive." He hesitated. "I came back, didn't I?" Then he smiled, gently, sadly, and kissed her forehead. But his lips were as cold as rain on stone. Busayo tried to bury the truth as if it were another body, but the ground beneath her marriage refused to stay still. The villagers began to murmur. Some claimed they saw Jide at the graveyard at dawn, talking to himself. Others said his footprints never filled with water when it rained. Busayo went to the old midwife, Mama Iriti, for counsel. The woman listened in silence, eyes clouded with both pity and old knowledge. "My daughter," she said, "you are sleeping beside a spirit. And spirits only stay where there is unfinished love." Busayo shook her head. "He loves me." Mama Iriti's voice softened. "Then free him before love turns to rot." That night, Busayo followed Jide. He walked past the edge of the village, through fog, until he reached a small clearing. There, beneath a crooked tree, he knelt over a mound of earth. His own name carved into the stone. He whispered softly, as though speaking to the grave itself. "Thank you for lending me time," he said. "But she is lonely still." Busayo's breath caught. The air turned colder. When he turned around, his eyes glowed faintly, not with light, but with the color of sorrow. "You shouldn't have come," he said. Then the wind carried her name through the trees, whispered twice, in two voices. By dawn, Busayo's fear had become a living thing. She ran to the shrine at the village's heart, where Bobatanemu, the priest of the old gods, kept watch. The old man listened as she told her story. When she finished, he said only, "The dead do not always rest because love will not let them." He prepared 3 things, a gourd of salt water, a charcoal mark for her doorway, and a candle that must never go out before sunrise. "If he is yours," Boba said, "he will fade by dawn. If he is not, the earth will call him home." That night, Busayo followed his words. She lit the candle, placed the salt at her bedside, and waited. At midnight, the candle flickered once. Twice. Then the air shifted. Jide entered the room, silent, solemn. He looked at her with eyes that seemed older than their marriage, deeper than the river. "Busayo," he said softly. "Why call others when you could have called me?" "Because you're not mine anymore," she whispered. His face broke, not in anger, but sorrow. "Then I will go." But before dawn came, she found his ring on the table, wet, cold, and faintly smelling of soil. A year passed. Busayo wore black for a man already buried. But on the 3rd anniversary of their wedding, she returned to the jacaranda tree. The evening was quiet. The air felt thick with waiting. She placed his ring at the tree's root and whispered, "Go home, Jide." The wind stilled. Then the ground trembled, soft but sure, like something breathing beneath. The earth cracked open, and soil spilled like sighs. From within the grave, a faint light pulsed once, as if a heart had remembered how to beat. Then his voice, quiet, distant, almost tender, whispered her name. "Busayo." And as the ground closed again, the wind carried his final words through the branches. "Thank you for loving me enough to let me die twice." After that night under the jacaranda, Busayo believed the story had ended. She kept his ring buried where she placed it, stopped speaking his name aloud, and returned to her weaving. For a time, peace returned, a fragile, trembling thing that sat lightly on her shoulder. But peace does not last long when love has learned the language of ghosts. It began with whispers, faint, like someone speaking through a wall. At first, she thought it was wind brushing the cracks in her window. Then one evening, as she spun cotton, she heard it clearly. "Busayo." The voice came from beneath her door, soft, pleading. Her heart hammered. She whispered a prayer and pressed her ear to the wood. The air was cold. "Jide," she breathed. The door creaked open slowly, though no one stood there. Only the faint smell of wet clay drifted in. From that night onward, her house began to change. Mirrors clouded with mist. Footsteps paced the veranda when no one was home. And sometimes, late at night, she would wake to find a single purple jacaranda petal lying on her pillow. She went to Mama Iriti again. The old woman sighed, touching Busayo's wrist. You tried to let him go, she said. But love that deep leaves echoes. He's not haunting you to harm you, he's asking for release. Then how? Busayo whispered. I gave him the earth. I gave him goodbye. Mama Iriti's eyes turned distant. Then he's waiting for what comes after goodbye. That night, Busayo lit a lamp and sat in silence until midnight. When the wind rose, she whispered, if you're here, show me. The flame flickered. The room chilled. Then, faint and pale, Jide appeared by the door, not as a man of flesh, but as a shimmer of sorrow. His face was gentle, his eyes dark with longing. Busayo, he said, I was not meant to stay. But when I saw your tears, I couldn't rest. I came back to finish what I promised. What promise? She asked. He smiled faintly. To build you a home. And before she could answer, the ghost faded, leaving only the sound of hammering, faint and steady, somewhere beneath the earth. The next morning, Busayo followed the sound. She walked past the market, through the old path by the river, until she reached a clearing she'd never noticed before. There stood a small house, half-finished, made of red clay and jacaranda wood. The air around it was heavy, cool, and still. On the doorframe, carved faintly, were the words, for Busayo. She stepped closer. The scent of damp soil filled her lungs. Inside, everything was untouched but familiar, a woven mat like hers, a small clay pot with flowers, a bed covered with pale dust. And on the bed lay Jide's wooden box, the same one he carried the night he returned. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside were small tokens, a white cloth, her old comb, and a folded note written in his hand. I built this house before I died. Each brick I laid, I whispered your name. But I never finished the roof. Now, it waits for your forgiveness. Busayo sank to her knees. Forgive you, she whispered. You left me in silence. But as her tears hit the floor, the roof beams groaned, and the sound was not decay. It was gratitude. That night she dreamt of the same house, glowing faintly under moonlight. Jide stood inside it, smiling. Come home, he said. Just once. So I can rest. Busayo woke shaking. The ring, the one she had buried, now lay beside her bed, clean and shining. She touched it, and her hand went cold. She knew what the dream meant. He had not come to take her, but to invite her to finish the house. To close what he could not close in life. Busayo returned to Boba Tanemu, the old priest. He listened as she spoke of the unfinished house, the ring, and the voice that called her name in dreams. When she finished, he said, the bond between the living and the dead is like a river. Cross it wrongly, and it swallows both. But if you end it with truth, both sides find rest. He gave her a small clay bowl filled with river dust. Spread this in the house he built, he said. Then speak his name 3 times, not with longing, but with peace. If he answers, don't look back when he leaves. Busayo did as told. She walked to the red house before dusk, the bowl trembling in her hands. She spread the dust on the floor and whispered, Jide Adewale, rest now. You are loved. You are forgiven. At first, nothing happened. Then the walls began to hum, low, deep, like the sound of the earth exhaling. Jide appeared in the doorway, faint and flickering. Busayo, he said softly, I waited for these words. She stepped forward, tears streaming. You were my heart, Jide. He smiled, fading with each word. Then let me be your memory now. As he disappeared, the house stilled. A final petal drifted down from the rafters, a jacaranda bloom, fresh as morning. Busayo closed her eyes. The air grew warm again. The shadows softened. The house no longer wept. Weeks passed. The village began to believe the haunting was over. Busayo smiled again, move through the market without whispers. But peace in Ife-Ada is a fragile thing. On the night of their third wedding anniversary, she dreamed of rain. She saw herself standing by the jacaranda tree, its roots coiling into the grave below. The ground began to breathe again. And from the soil, Jide's voice rose, calm and clear. Busayo, come see what I built. She woke, gasping. The window was open. Outside, the tree glowed faintly under the moon. Compelled, she went barefoot through the wet grass to the graveyard hill. The soil over Jide's grave had cracked open again, not with decay, but with light. Inside the crack, she saw the red clay of the house walls. The one he built. And within it, his ghost stood, smiling, surrounded by the glow of finished beams and peaceful stillness. He reached out a hand. This is home now, he said. But only if you can let go of what you were. She wept. I already did. He smiled sadly. Not yet. Then he turned, and for the first time, she saw another figure behind him, her own reflection, faint and transparent. She stumbled back. No. He shook his head gently. Don't fear it. It's only the part of you that stayed with me. The grave began to close. Jide's form dissolved, leaving behind one sound, a heartbeat that slowly faded into the wind. When morning came, the villagers found Busayo asleep beneath the jacaranda tree, her hands folded peacefully over her chest. She was breathing, but faintly. For 7 days, she slept. And each night, the people said the tree bloomed more richly than ever before. On the 7th morning, she awoke, calm and smiling. She said only one thing to Mama Iriti, he's home now. Busayo never married again. She built a small bench by the tree, where she sat to weave and tell stories to children. They called her Ayawo Eji, the bride who waited twice. Years later, when she died, they buried her beneath that same tree. On the night of her burial, rain fell softly, and the earth, they say, breathed once more. Now, when the wind moves through Ife-Ada, it carries the faint sound of two hearts beating in time, one human, one not, and the whisper of a love that refused to die quietly.